Hey guys, how you doing? So Dan from Trading with Dan here. So today I'm quite excited to do this video because I actually think this video may be my most important video that I'll ever do. And yeah, important from like just going forwards with what's going to happen in the world, how things are going to pan out. Obviously video on YouTube going to be timestamped this day I did it, 1st of April. And yeah, this is not an April Fool's joke or anything like that. It's not April Fool's. This is just happens to be the date today. So basically, this video, what I'm going to talk about is how we're going to get out of this financial crisis. Basically, the only way that they're going to be able to do it. And I'm going to tell you guys what that way is. And I pretty much think this will be how things pan out, whether it's this year, next year, the year after. Yeah, whenever it happens, within the next few years, probably within the next 3 to 4 years maximum. But I mean, it could be sooner if they realise that they've got no other way out. So the problem we've got at the moment is the global debt. Everyone's in debt, so that's the first thing you have to understand. So the debt you got to, like people say, a credit bubble, a debt bubble. You got to understand it is basically like a bubble. It has to keep its pressure. Otherwise it's just going to deflate pretty quickly. So this bubble is now deflating. So what we have got in essence is deflation. So people might think, well, the Fed's printing all this money, this, that and the other. Well, those people are wrong. What the main problem is it doesn't matter how much the Fed prints. That money has got to get into the real world system before it can create any inflation. And as it happened in basically 2008, when Helicopter Ben was printing the money out, that money was pretty much sterilized, stayed with the banks. It did find its way into certain assets, obviously like the stock market, bond markets and things like that. Those financial assets did actually go up due to that inflation, but a lot of the money was basically sterilized and held by the financial system. So what that is the basically the velocity of money. So the speed of that money was slow. So what's happening now is, again, we're getting deflation. It doesn't matter how much the Fed prints, because that money is not going to enter the real economy. The velocity of money is practically zero. So it does not matter which banks are holding however much money, and however much money the bank prints, the central banks print. The nearest they're coming to trying to get any sort of inflation is by sending the checks out to people, because sending those checks to actual people, those people will spend that money in the real economy. But again, that isn't enough to reinflate the asset bubbles that are deflating. So yeah, and if you think about the trillions and trillions they're trying to pump into financial markets, that money is just not going anywhere. That money is just sitting on deposit at primary dealers and other banking institutions that are basically posting all the junk that they've got as collateral to basically get access to those deposits, which they then sit on. So that brings me to so now you guys understand that concept now. So the money isn't going to get into the real economy. People aren't going to get it and spend it, so it's not going to drive inflation. We are struggling with a massive deflation of the debt bubble. So basically, let me put it quite simply for you. If you own a stock portfolio that's worth 100 grand, it's down, I don't know what the stock market's down now, maybe about 30%. So just give or take. So 30% of that value is gone. So 30% of that 100 grand is gone. So $30,000, pounds, whatever you were denominating it in, is gone. So that money is gone. So that currency is gone. That value is gone. Those dollars are gone. Those pounds are gone. And that is the deflation. So that's going to happen with house prices. That's going to happen in the bond market. It's happening in the stock market. It's happening in all sorts of areas of people's like investment world. So that massive amount of currency, capital, money is disappearing, and that is the deflation of the money base. So the only way so first and foremost, the Fed is doing what it's doing now. It's trying to do everything. It's trying to give guarantees for everything. So, but that's not increasing the speed of money, the velocity of money. So it's not going to actually increase inflation. So this is, I am an Austrian school economist, and I do prescribe to their fundamental reasons. One of them is that money supply, an increasing money supply equals increasing inflation. So they literally see it as simply as, they define inflation as an increase in the money supply, which is fair enough. If that's how they want to define it, that's fair enough. But that is a simplistic view which doesn't actually take into account the velocity of money. So if you don't take into account whether that money is actually being used, then it's almost irrelevant what the number is of the total inflated money supply. So for example, like I said, if basically the central bank was to print a quadrillion dollars, and then it was going to give that quadrillion dollars to JP Morgan, and JP Morgan sit with it in a bank account because they don't want to lend it out or spend it or anything because prices are going down. So that quadrillion dollars that has the money supply has been inflated by, has no impact on the real world. So that's what you have to understand. So the velocity of money is that money getting used, that money getting spent, that money basically going chasing the price of assets up, which is inflation. So yes, so now that you guys understand that, so let me tell you, the only way, they're trying everything, they're throwing the kitchen sink at this, they're trying everything, it is not going to work. It is not going to work. This debt bubble is going to deflate. We're going to deflate. We're going to go into a depression, and that depression is going to last as long as it takes them to spark inflation again, to get inflation, get prices going up again, get more money basically supplied into the system, get the velocity of money up, and that is basically what they're going to have to try and do. Now this is it. This brings me to the point. Basically, what I think is gonna, I'm pretty much certain in my mind. This is what I think. This is why this is one of my most important videos. This is why I think I'll be able to look back at this video in 10 years, 15 years and be like, yeah, I remember I was sat there at my desk, I did this video on April Fool's Day in 2020, and I was like, I basically told everyone what's going to happen. There we go. Pow. Kudos to me. But anyway, so what they're going to do, they are going to have to revalue gold. So people think, oh, we're going to go back onto a gold standard. We're going to go back onto gold standard. No, we're not going onto a gold standard. The only way for them to get inflation back into this system is for them to revalue gold. So this is not going back onto a gold standard. This is them saying that the gold is now worth this amount of money. Now, if I was to guess a figure, it's going to maybe $5,000 an ounce, maybe $10,000 an ounce, but I would probably guess $5,000 an ounce, depending on where the gold price goes in the period of time that the Fed are throwing the kitchen sink at everything and not actually getting anywhere. So depending on where gold is, by the time they realize that they can't do anything, so say gold was at $5,000 or $3,000 by then they would have to up it to, like, say $10,000. But say gold is where it is now or lower, which could potentially be in a deflationary environment, then $5,000 will probably be enough. So I would probably guess that gold's not really going to go anywhere at the moment, and whilst they try and play out everything they can do for however many years this will do. I can't give you a time scale. They could be pretty quick and realise within a year that they can't do anything. It could be 2 years, we could be 3 years into a depression before they do this. So what will happen is, say they revalue gold at $5,000, which is what my guess would be, $5,000. So what they will do, the central bank of America, the Federal Reserve, will say, right, we are valuing gold at $5,000 an ounce. If you think that's expensive, if you think that is a lot of dollars for your gold, bring me all the gold you want, all the gold, and I will give you $5,000 per ounce of gold you give me, right? And if you think $5,000 is cheap, given the environment, well, you come and bring me $5,000 and I'll give you the gold. But obviously, most people, almost everybody at that point is going to be, right, I need to get my $5,000, take my gold, get my $5,000 per ounce, and then buy other assets with that $5,000, invest those other assets into the economy. So Gold has immediately been revalued to $5,000, and this is backed by the printing press and Fort Knox. So the Fort Knox and the printing press get together. You bring the gold, we'll print you the dollars. There's the dollars, and then those dollars then will get invested in other assets, and nothing goes up on its own in isolation in an economy. No asset, nothing is going to go up on its own without dragging everything else up. So that is going to basically restart inflation. So the way for them to fight inflation is to basically revalue gold. So this has actually been done in the past before. FDR did it basically in 1934. He basically he took basically American people off the gold standard. He said that you had to everyone had to basically give their gold to the Fed. You weren't allowed to basically hoard gold bullion. He then revalued gold from $20.67 to $35. That increases the prices of everything, corn, wheat, copper, everything went up. Inflation came, and then they recovered from the depression that they were in since 1929, since the stock market crash of 1929. So FDR did that on purpose. Nixon, actually, he did the same thing. He got inflation by basically messing about with gold, and he got inflation. He didn't want inflation then, he didn't want it, but he basically did the same thing as FDR did, the same thing they're gonna have to do now to get inflation, and he got it by accident, and that's why inflation got really bad. So what he did, he basically suspended all gold redemptions for countries. So when you think about the gold standard, the American people came off the gold standard in 1934. The world, because other governments were still trading with a gold-backed dollar with the US. The world got taken off the gold standard in 1971, which then meant gold basically went up, and then again that created basically inflation. So that is what they're going to have to do. Deflation is the biggest bogeyman for central banks, because it is what they've got nothing, they can't fight against it unless they basically do this. So they will revalue the price of gold. They will basically dish out freshly printed dollars for every ounce of gold that anyone brings to them. They will stack up the gold. They will basically reinflate the world economy that way. So you guys will take a rain check there, guys. Get back to me in like 1 year, 2 years, 3 years when this happens. I hope we don't have to get too far into this depression before they do something, because it's not gonna be nice for people. It's not gonna be a good environment. The deflating of everything is gonna be rubbish. Depression is not good. I mean, I'm instantly calling it a depression. I mean, I'm going like straight past deep recession and going straight to depression, because it is gonna be a depression is what we've got until they basically stop the deflationary spiral that we're in at the moment. So there you go, guys. That's what's going to happen. This video is going to be on YouTube. We'll look back at this in the future. Remember April the 1st, 2020. I kind of wish it wasn't April the 1st, because it seems like this is an April Fool's joke, but this is not an April Fool's joke, guys. This is 100% serious. This is economics. Basically, this is how the world works. This is what is going to happen. So this Dan from Trading with Dan. Everybody always do your own research. I'm not a financial advisor. I know, guys. I know I probably should be. I know I'm a genius. I know all that, and I know you guys might be laughing at me now for saying that, but we won't be laughing when we look back at this video in the future. Anyway, so remember, always do your own research. I'm not a financial advisor, and I will speak to you guys soon.